A shout out to Damon and Paul for a master class this evening. I think we were all just completely wowed by that exchange. That was just a wonderful conversation. So we're transitioning now to a youth panel that I get the pleasure to lead. And our youth panel was written by me and the students. And as youth, we are committed to creating a world of total wellness. That is our superpower, total wellness. When we say our health, we want healthy practices that regenerate the whole world. Our session is a blend of experiential exercises that include yoga and mindfulness. To create a healthy, regenerative planet, we need to embrace our bodies as extensions of the earth. And as youth leaders, we bring our passion to create with you a vision of community and global healing by developing new rituals for our climate and ourselves. We look within ourselves to find new and healthy solutions. We come here as climate healers, so join us and heal our lives and our planet. So before I get to our speakers, I'd like to share with you a couple of notes. And I've got the students that are going to be joining me on this slide. So I'm delighted to have Erin, Emily, Tara, Zara, and Aaliyah join us. They're high school students and college students from the Long Island region. And there's a little bit more bio on each of them here. But let me start with just a couple of comments to kind of set the stage for what we'd like to do this evening with you. First off, a lot has been said about the power of regenerative action. And I'd want to give a shout out to an organization in New York State called New York Renews that's played an incredible role in helping New York to develop some important landmark legislation for our own statewide Green New Deal, as well as a shout out to the Long Island Progressive Coalition for being such excellent stewards of this statewide effort here on Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk County. The students you're gonna meet tonight are working with me in the Suffolk County community of Wyandanch, New York, and we're being supported through a statewide network of pediatricians and other children's environmental health advocates. Our work in Wyandanch is about creating a new, innovative, holistic framework to advance the total wellness of this special Long Island community. And we're still fumbling our way forwards, trying to figure out what this work will be about in Wyandanch. But I came up with this acronym, and I'd like to share it with you, that the focal point of our work is respect. And that's an acronym for regenerative, ecological, sacred, peaceful, empathetic, caring, and transformative. The work we're about is about looking within, but we're participants on this planetary journey. And it's amazing the moment of crisis we're in, but also the moment of opportunity we're in. And I just want to acknowledge this YouTube video featuring Indigenous leaders from around the world. One's Canadian, one's from Greenland, etc. And this series called The Wisdom of Trauma. So we're talking about healing modalities like meditation and yoga. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with solving climate change? And hopefully before we're done, we'll pique your interest in this and you'll agree with us that this journey within is as important as the journey without. And this is something that Indigenous cultures have been speaking to us about for centuries now. And maybe we're starting to listen in a little bit more carefully to their wisdom. A lot rides on our ability to get this right. And here's some of those Indigenous leaders who I think are worth listening to. So it's easy to pick that up on YouTube. Some of the faces here are familiar to you, some are not. The two images here for partnership and domination come from Rianne Eisler. the woman next to Dr. King. And what I'd like to talk about is the fact that living in a patriarchal, hierarchical social construct is a violent existence for us and the planet. We can't simply solve the climate crisis with regenerative solutions if we're not also making these deeper cultural changes at the same time. And Riane Eisler's work is just amazing for giving us very simple, effective ways of thinking about who we are and how we should interact with each other. So some of the comments I'd like to share about this context of drawdown and regeneration are, yes, we can spend a lot of time talking about the crisis, but what's so inspiring about all the work that we've heard so far this evening is that we really want to be in the lane of solutions, opportunities, and also joy. I want to be part of a joyful social movement. I want to learn how to be more joyful in my life. And I am absolutely convinced that the way to bring people into our social movement so that we continue to build the world's largest social movement ever is to create opportunities where people feel safe, they feel resilient, they feel that we're lowering their individual and community stress, we're improving people's quality of life, their prosperity, but we'll have to do that in qualitatively different ways. As Paul mentioned, the life of consumption can't be what this is all about. It has to be something deeper and more profound. And for me, the work at Thich Nhat Hanh and his context of interbeing is just such a beautiful way expressing what life is truly about. Perhaps we'll have time a little later in our program to come back to that. So this slide shows us really, I think, in a very effective and clear way that what happens to us as individuals, how we treat our spirit, how we nurture ourselves, the kind of love we give to ourselves and we give to those closest to us, it ripples out in truly profound ways. And it is how we create flourishing planetary systems, which is what we're here to discuss tonight. So with those brief introductory remarks, I want to invite our first youth speaker to come forward. And that's Tara Lauter. Thank you. And Tara's a student at Long Island University.
Thank you, Professor Carlin. And thank you all for coming tonight. I would like to screen share my slides with you. Tonight, I want us to all challenge ourselves to redefine our worldview using irony, and that starts with ourselves. So when you look in the mirror and you think, wow, I look great today, or maybe you think, wow, I look poppin', like I'm doing my best today, that is positive self-talk, and positive self-talk has significant implications for academic performance and environmental performance, in addition to athletic performance. So if you're a track star and you're at the starting line and you're thinking about how well you're going to do in the race, you're more inclined to do well. In 2021, Nature published a study about the implications of positive versus negative self-talk and found that self-respect is so much more impactful in cognitive function when performing in real life. So if it can affect our lives, it can certainly affect the environment. We have to take a more positive outlook on how we view the environment. And it starts with yourself. So I'd like all of you to think about ways that you think about yourself in a negative way. Negative self-talk is when you think about yourself in negative ways, such as your appearance, your performance. When you look in the mirror and you think, wow, I don't look so great today, or I put on a little weight. That's all negative self-talk. Can anyone share in the chat about ways that they may engage in negative self-talk? All right, so here are a few examples. I look horrible today. I see Zara shared being critical on bad hair days. I see another person shared worrying I'm too annoying. Those are all ways that are pretty negative to view yourself. And when you think about yourself in that way, you might see yourself like this. You might think you feel gross, and it really affects how you perceive yourself, and that affects how you perform throughout the day. So you need to ask yourself, how can you change the way you think about yourself? Because it's not a matter of changing who you are, it's a matter of changing how you perceive yourself. When you say things like, I look amazing today, or, it's a bad hair day, but I have the opportunity to try some great new styles, you change the way that you view yourself and you feel a lot better. Obviously, the Barbie example is a little exaggerative, but you're going to see it in the mirror and you're going to feel it inside. And we're going to experience the same change when we change our outlook on the environment. We need to put it into practice by taking big problems and looking at them as opportunities. Changing our view of the world is a way to make ourselves proactive environmentalists instead of waiting for a problem to react to. So let's start with air pollution. Can anyone drop in the chat some ways that they've thought of addressing air pollution? All right, so some bicycling is a great way because that does reduce carbon emissions. Some other fun ways to reduce air pollution are planting trees, turning off the light switch, and even carpooling with friends. These aren't things that are tremendously difficult. We sometimes take environmentalism to mean it's a great task, it's difficult, it's tiresome, and that can turn a lot of people away from being an environmentalist or thinking more eco-friendly. But when we turn environmentalism into small acts of kindness that we do for our environment, we change the way that we act, and we truly do make change that is proactive. With positive environmentalism, we challenge ourselves to think about the earth as an opportunity to do better, to look at our earth and say, our earth is beautiful. This is a challenge I'm willing to take on. Paul Hawkins wrote himself that thinking about the doom and gloom of the world, we have to think about this as an opportunity for our generation. And Mr. Hawkins was completely right in saying that, because when we think that way, we act that way. I'd like to challenge you all to think of a problem that's an opportunity that we can address together while we're all here tonight. So I'm going to give a starter. I think we started with air pollution. Another one could be water pollution, because we live on Long Island. Food waste is a great one. We live on Long Island. We're surrounded by water. A lot of us are from all over the world, and water pollution is something that is a global issue. It affects how people drink clean water. It affects raising acidity levels in the ocean. It's something that affects all aspects of our ecosystem. But there are ways that we can address this as an opportunity for change. We can look for financial incentives for new government programs. And this is a pretty broad solution that we can look at for a lot of problems. So with water pollution, maybe we can provide incentives for developing clean water programs. And there are other ways to come up with different solutions, but the main way tonight is changing our mindset. And that's something that we have the power to do as individuals. And I encourage you to all try today. When we think about changing the past and the future, we sometimes feel powerless. A lot of people feel like we can't change the future with a small change today. But when people think about going back in the past and in a time machine, time traveling, we're a little wary of what we might change in the future. We are afraid that a small change, maybe as small as dropping a pin, talking to the wrong person, will cause a change in the future with time travel. So why is it not the same in the present day? This is our opportunity to make changes in the future. Today is the time that we have in the present to make changes for our future, and we start that with changing our mindset. I truly thank you all for being kind enough to lend your time to listening tonight, and I'd like to introduce my friend Emily Mcrae to continue speaking about environmentalism in our everyday lives. We're both health sciences students at Long Island University Post. Hi, Emily.
I have to unmute myself. Hi, everyone.
So tonight we want to talk to you about our experiences with nonviolence and violence against our environment, and how promoting nonviolence is essential to promoting drawdown.
We also we'll be discussing with you solutions to incorporating nonviolence towards the environment and into our everyday life.
Yes, Emily, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a suburban community on Long Island known as Rockville Center. And my parents encouraged me and my siblings to walk to school, to the park, and to ride our bike. And my town was structured so that we had the ability to do this. This allowed me to grow into the athletic, healthy individual that I actually am today. Not only was this healthy for myself, but it was also healthy towards the environment. Gasoline emissions make up a great percentage of air pollution, believe it or not. Americans burn about 400 million gallons of gasoline a day. And that's about over 7 billion pounds of carbon dioxide produced just from burning gasoline.
That's incredible. I had no idea that it was that significant with just driving a car. Relating back to Emily, I grew up in Hampton Bays and I would walk from high school to town and the library, see my Hampton Bays people at. Having opportunities for students to safely walk places after school is a great way to encourage students to be environmentally conscious from such a young age. Did anyone else have the experience of walking after school somewhere or growing up and being able to have a walkable community? Ooh, Erin said yes. Would you like to unmute and share with us, Erin?
Yes, of course. Oh, apologies. That's fixed now. Are we all right?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Erin. So my experience with walking to and from school is when I was in elementary school, I actually lived less than a block away from my school. And so for 3 years, me and my family, we would just walk to and from school every single day. It was always so nice because you got a really nice sense of the nature that was happening around. I got to watch the seasons change right in front of me. It was very lovely. And it was very healthy too.
That's beautiful. I see another one person in the chat said, Laura said that she walks to and from school. That's wonderful. And there are communities where this might not be possible, but if it is possible, I do encourage you to take the opportunity.
Yes, there are communities that may not have bicycle paths, and but it is important to consider incorporating positive environmental changes like this. Tara, in what way do you practice nonviolence?
For me, my mom raised me with Hinduism, so I grew up not eating red meat. And later on in my life, I chose to not eat white meat. So it wasn't that much of a change, but I made this choice because my best friend wrote a paper about the environmental implications of producing meat. And this was also after I watched a pretty graphic Netflix movie. But I found out that it takes an incredible amount of water to produce a single pound of meat. So for a pound of beef, it takes about 1,800 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of meat, red meat, beef. And with white meat, it's a bit less. So with a pound of chicken, it's 500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of chicken. But this was pretty shocking to me, especially because I know that clean water is a big problem.
Yeah.
Not all communities have access to clean water. So to think that a lot of it was pushed towards meat production was a bit concerning on my end. And this isn't a system that would be held up on a global scale in the United States. In the United States, we manage, but on a global scale, it certainly would not be upheld. So I do think it's completely shocking, and not everyone might want to cut out meat completely, but I do think that it is a healthy choice, both on the individual and the global level, to cut it out every once in a while, maybe meatless Mondays.
I mean, I agree. This is something that I didn't know. So thank you for sharing that with me. I love my red meat, of course, but actually thanks to Huntington Breast Cancer Action Coalition, I learned that red meat is actually considered a carcinogen. So now knowing this, I've cut back on eating red meat to 2 times a week. Does anyone in the audience participate in Meatless Mondays, or are they vegan? Are they vegetarian? And why did they decide to make this choice?
Ooh, Aaliyah typed in the chat that she has made that choice. Aaliyah, would you like to unmute and share?
Hi, I'm Aaliyah, and I do actually, I make a goal to cut my red meat consumption to like once a month, and I make a goal to also have at least one plant-based meal a day, and also just look into plant-based recipes because like vegetables are really good.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea with plant-based recipes. This is a great way to make more eco-friendly choices without having to make expensive or difficult choices like wind farms or solar panels, because those are all amazing, great, impactful things, but it's not something that we all have access to as individuals. So thank you for sharing, Aaliyah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And like I said prior, incorporating sidewalks, bicycle paths, one-way streets, and eliminating areas where streets are unnecessary can improve a healthier environment for communities and promote walkability amongst our communities.
Yes, changing daily habits like using plastic water bottles, not eating ham sandwiches every day, or even reducing shower time are great changes to implement.
I've actually started using a timer to cut time in the shower. So I also encourage everyone in the audience to look for small but impactful ways to incorporate environmentalism in their daily lives.
Emily and I's peers tonight have prepared presentations focusing on nonviolence and the self, and we are so excited for you all to listen in.
It's been great speaking with you, and we are looking forward to engaging with you all throughout this event.
Thank you both. And next, I'd like to ask Erin Torres to step forward again, and she's going to share a little bit more information on how we can be more empowered. Erin, you there? As Erin's setting up, I want to share that I think all of our youth are working with what one of the students mentioned, which is the Huntington Breast Cancer Action Coalition. They've all worked there as interned. They're also, some of them have been working more directly with the New York State Children's Environmental Health Centers as well. And as I mentioned earlier, they're all working on this project in Wyandanch. So they keep themselves quite busy.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
You're good.
All right, I'm glad. So if I need to repeat again, my name is Erin Torres, and I am working with Professor Carlin, Emily, and Tara, and all these other amazing speakers to give you guys these presentations today. So my presentation is called Creating Proactive and Not Reactive Minds. So I want to start off with a little story time. I'll be honest, one of my biggest character flaws is that I am a very defensive person. I'll give you an example. My parents would come into my room when I should be studying, but I wasn't. And they would say, "Why aren't you doing your homework? You should be doing your homework. You have a test tomorrow." And my brain immediately goes, okay, look, in my defense, I was doing this. Why are you attacking me? I am so overwhelmed. And instead of being proactive and saying, "Oh, well, I will in a moment," or "I'm sorry, I'll get to it," I immediately was quick to yell and to get very defensive. Now, clearly, I was overreacting a bit too much to the response. Now, when I joined HBCAC for the first time, that was a big problem too. I found that if there was somebody who disagreed with my perspective on the environment, or I would try to convince them to have a certain viewpoint of mine, they wouldn't agree. And I found that it would be very difficult to share my perspective because I would get very defensive. I'd feel my heart pounding and my throat drying up. In other words, I like to say I suffered from chronic defensiveness. So what about you guys? Have you ever had a moment in which someone has challenged you or called you out on something? Maybe it was during a conference at your job, in a meeting, and some annoying coworker was yelling at you or something. Or maybe it was arguing a different perspective on Thanksgiving. You know how those can go. You get the pit of annoyance in your stomach and you get the desire to say the last word. It can be very frustrating. Do you fight them? So you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with drawdown? What does this have to do with climate change? We may not realize it, but we witness defensiveness all the time, especially in regards to climate change. Think about it. When people advocate for certain initiatives, such as building more solar panels, using less plastic bags, banning fossil fuels, in the attempt to make our voices heard, we will have people who disagree with us, and it may cause people to get defensive. Or even just think about politics, negotiating on the political stage. When we see people trying to pass sustainability bills, there's just debate, and it takes a very long time for these bills to pass. And I won't get too into it, but it takes a while. Or maybe sometimes when we see amazing activists like Greta Thunberg, who call us out on our failure to put the planet over our economy. Sorry, guys. You love a good YouTube ad. Please wait, brief intermission. If you guys want wine, get DoorDash. You see that? Go get DoorDash.
We're not getting the audio. So you may have started it without clicking add audio when you did your initial screen share.
Oh no. Is there a way that I could add it now, or I might as well? You're on mute, Professor.
Stop your screen share and then click the box when you restart share screen that says add audio.
Got it. Brief intermission, folks. I apologize. There we go.
People for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare...
So, if you guys have seen Greta Thunberg, she's an amazing, amazing speaker. However, one of the biggest things that happens is, of course, there are people that disagree. Now, the biggest thing that, oh my goodness, apologies again. The biggest thing that Greta Thunberg elicits when she presents her speeches is that her reaction can go in two general ways. They get positive responses, of course, but if there's ever negative defensiveness, it can be separated into two categories: climate guilt versus climate shame. Climate guilt is essentially a feeling as if your actions are wrong. And climate shame is an attack on your personal character. For example, let's say you're taking care of your friend's hamster for the weekend, and unfortunately you wake up and you find it dead on the ground. When climate guilt is saying, oh no, I cannot believe I harmed this hamster, I cannot, well, not climate guilt, but feeling guilt is when you are sad for hurting the hamster, you are upset about your actions. But feeling shameful is thinking, oh no, I committed this action, I am a terrible person. And those are two different ways that we tend to get defensive when we talk about anything, but especially with climate. Sometimes we blame it on ourselves. It's our action, or sometimes we put the pressure on a specific group of people. So what is this drawdown connection? Learning to recognize our defensiveness and taking actions against it is a huge step to ensure that we are in the right state of mind for negotiation and discussing climate change. How so? Well, defensiveness is a huge step in bettering our mental, social, and emotional health, which could have a huge impact on improving our climate. Now, one of Drawdown's biggest stressors when it comes to climate solutions is to educate people, especially women and girls, to achieve gender equality. Unfortunately, we live in a very patriarchal society, a world in which many people, especially boys, are taught that it's not okay to express their emotions, and a stigma against not being macho enough or even receiving any mental health care. By stressing the teachings of emotional health onto children throughout their lifetime, we can teach both genders, or anyone on the gender spectrum, to become more active and effective listeners and leaders. They will listen to the needs of others, such as women and girls, and we can develop societies that focus on this impact. So, quick fun facts. Did you know that when we get defensive, our IQ drops by 20 points, our thinking becomes rigid, and those around us become defensive too? So let's take a brief moment to do a very quick exercise. If you have a piece of paper, take it out. You can write on your phone or you can write on the chat. I'd like you to answer, what do you usually feel when you get defensive? Like I said earlier, I know for me, I tend to talk very loud, I tend to talk very fast, and I tend to have a very rapid heartbeat. Does anybody have reactions to when they get defensive? What do they feel? Yes, Tara says that she just feels stressed. I completely agree. I get very stressed out. Anyone else? Someone said they start to cry. Oh no, I feel that too. I can get very emotional sometimes. Now, one of the most importantly, if you don't have to write in chat, it's totally all right. But the question is, why do we feel this way? Why do we get defensive over things? If anyone has an answer, feel free to use the answers that I'm not going to say. Put it in the chat. Sometimes it's because we fear failure. Sometimes it's a fear of feeling worthless. Sometimes we may just feel embarrassed. And sometimes, who knows, any other reasons? When you feel you've done something wrong, I completely agree. Just an awkward feeling to feel like you're just not in the right spot. And to try and defend yourself, it's not easy. All right. So one thing I'd like you all to do today, when you have the time, is to create an action plan to recognize what you feel when you get defensive, or the next time you catch yourself in an argument and you realize, this is awkward. Recognize what you're feeling if you have a rapid heartbeat, a headache, and I want you to create an action plan to prevent yourself from acting irrationally or doing something that might hurt in the future. Now, one way that we could easily, well, not easily, but one way that could help us reduce the impact of our defensiveness is the power of our breath. In the wise words of Swami Saranadana, breathing is your body's most intimate companion. And usually we don't think about breathing too much. So it's important to recognize our breath and become one with both the body and the earth. So I would like to do a really quick exercise with you before we move on to the next presentation. It's something called box breathing. You can do this to music while you're in the car, or even just counting a little bit in your head. And essentially what we would do is we'll be counting in fours. Exhale to a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, inhale to a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then start the pattern anew. So we're going to do this together right now. Get ready. Sit comfortable in your chair. Keep your posture a little straighter. Close your eyes. So, ready? Ready. So, inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. We're going to do this again. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. All right. I hope you enjoyed my presentation for the day. That's all I have. If anybody has any questions, feel free to say them right now in the chat, or if you just want to keep breathing, feel free to do so as well. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Erin, but don't disappear.
I won't.
Can you stop your screen share first?
Yes, I may.
That was very well done. And I think we all appreciated what you were sharing. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about what you've been learning through this process. So we're here with this awesome team talking about solutions for drawdown, reducing the impacts of our daily life on the climate, finding strategies like planting trees to actually pull CO2 out of the atmosphere and help salvage this climate system of ours. And here we are talking about breathing. Could you help us make some of these connections now? Why is the breath a conduit, as I tried to argue in my opening comments, to a planetary crisis? You may have lost a few people there.
Yeah, I had a feeling it was a bit of a nasty transition.
No, not on your part.
Oh no. Well, here with Wyandanch and our meetings that we have every Tuesday, I really learned from Dr. Carlin that breathing is an extension of the body and a way to connect with the earth, both breathing, yoga, meditation. It's a really good way to relax and to just feel connected. I know I'm not doing the best job at explaining this. I don't entirely know the best way to put it into words.
Well, we talked in our opening statement about our superpowers.
Yes.
And we talked about our bodies as an extension of the earth.
Mhm.
And you introduced us to this idea that we have this very deep, intimate relationship with the breath. And I think part of what Damon was trying to introduce in his opening remarks this evening was that we want to regain that sense of intimacy with the natural world, that this idea that we're separated from nature is literally an idea we cooked up in our brains, and it's proving to be a disaster in terms of the consequences that has in the real world. So is our body really an extension of the earth, as I tried to assert? Is there something you want to say about the breath in our body and our connection to Mother Earth?
I think yes, and I'm going to snag a little bit from the comments because I agree that when you allow yourself to breathe, you allow yourself to center, to feel center in on the earth. And think about it. Humans do have the idea that we are separate from Earth. Some humans that I've met, at least. We think we're different from animals to the point where we literally say animals and humans, but we're all just one. We are all one being. We were created with carbon. We have water. We are all a part of the earth. And learning how to breathe, it's almost like our way of reconnecting with it, similar to the way that the trees provide people with oxygen. They sway around to give us something. The least we could do is center ourselves, remind ourselves of our surroundings, become very connected with our surroundings, and feel the warm breeze of a nice summer day, or feel our feet planted in the ground and how we are standing on this earth. We need to protect it. And just as we breathe, as we do any sort of mindfulness activity, it allows ourselves to almost remind ourselves and have gravity push us back down into realizing we are connected to the earth, hear what it's trying to tell you. I know that sounds a little too theoretical right there, but when I say hear what it's trying to tell you, I mean as in just, I don't even know.
Yes,
It's so hard to
you,
explain.
you were perfect. What does it tell you? Get
To
into
me,
it with us.
you
What
know
does
what
the
it
earth
tells
tell
me?
you?
I'll be honest, I had a
Yeah,
very
that's what we're
struggling
here for.
relationship. I've had a struggling with relationship with yoga for a very long time, and breathing. As someone who gets anxious a lot, I stress out all the time. God, even with this presentation, stressing out all the time. And one of the biggest things that I've learned through trying to learn how to breathe and trying to learn how to do yoga, trying to listen to what the earth is trying to tell me, in my head, I think that the universe is constantly trying to calm me down. I really do think that. I almost feel as off the walls as it sounds. Sometimes I genuinely feel as if nature tries to stop me from going too fast, and it recenters my body into a state of relaxation. And so every time I breathe and I hear, my dog barking outside, or if there's a bird that didn't migrate over the winter and I hear it outside, I just I listen, I hear it chirping, and I think my mind just wanders into being very aware of nature around me, and that forces me to slow down. And when it forces me to slow down, I naturally start to relax. So that is the best way I could explain how it is an extension of the earth to me, how my body connects to the earth, makes me feel better.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And everyone probably guessed, but let me be explicit that Erin and I didn't do any scripting at all there. So she
No.
was really in the hot seat. And
I
need to acknowledge that Erin's a high school student. So I could never do that in high school, Erin. So you're doing great.
Thank you so much. It took a lot of practice, and I can only get better, right? So hopefully I'll use this as a learning experience.
Someone in the chat mentioned the woman Julia Butterfly Hill, who's an extraordinary environmentalist. But I think if she was listening to you, Erin, she would have been very impressed because she really speaks from her heart, and she says things that are really quite in sync with what you just shared. And it's really about listening in to the beauty of Mother Earth. She's totally calmed and centered by that. In fact, listening to the trees, she said, saved her life while doing this amazing tree sit out west, high up in the tree canopy in the middle of an incredible storm. She just had to become like the tree. And that's really what the call is for me in terms of this work. And you really expressed that very beautifully. So I'd like to invite our next high school student to join us, Zara Chowdhury.
Hi guys, I'm Zara, and today my presentation will build upon Erin's and her very amazing explanation of our body and the earth. So I will be talking about yoga, which is a super unorthodox connection that a lot of us don't think of, but I think a lot of us should think of more often. Do you ever find yourself with a cluttered mind, tense body, and very stressed out? In fact, most of us probably feel this way with busy schedules where we don't put enough value to just doing nothing. As a student, I find myself very pressured under piles and piles of work and anxious waiting for some of my most important future decisions. At the start of my school year, my junior year, the work built up so immensely, and I saw my grades and the quality of my work declining. So I promised myself to begin taking the 9:30 a.m. classes after my mom annoyed me for weeks about it, to see if it really did distress as much as she promised me it would. And I did. For 6 weeks, I took the 9:30 a.m. yoga classes, and it was tough. It was hard to wake up, but I committed to it. And suddenly I felt like my cluttered mind had been put to ease and my anxious attitude had faded. My grades and work even got better. Yoga is a group of mental, physical, and spiritual practices, but it also teaches valuable principles. In the motions of yoga, one pays intense attention to their limbs and is constantly aware of their position in relation to the earth. Yoga poses can even imitate nature, becoming harmonious with the life around us. Furthermore, the practice of yoga provides equilibrium to the mind and body, as Erin touched upon before. Pranayama, a main component of yoga, is the practice of breath regulation and proper breathing techniques. Even modern medicine stresses the importance of proper breathing as it provides mental clarity, the detoxification of negative thoughts, and increases the flow of fresh oxygenated blood. The focus on correct breathing form encourages a sense of mindfulness, while the emphasis on connecting with the earth is grounding and stabilizing. Just as we are dependent on equilibrium, the earth is equally as too. Just as we respirate, the world around us does as well. The trees purify the environment from carbon dioxide and breathe out the oxygen that we depend on. The fresh water we drink is filtered through the rocks, gravel, and sand. The carbon and nitrogen cycles balance. These elements are cycled through the environment so they can help in sustaining life like me and you, our pets, the plants, everything around us. A cluttered and overworked earth cannot maintain its equilibrium properly. If the balance isn't held, then our earth cannot function well enough to sustain life. Yoga teaches us to be in harmony with ourselves, society, and nature. It offers a holistic view of the human earth ecosystem. We can translate the principles of yoga into how we treat the earth. As yoga teaches the importance of breathing, we should aim to regenerate the earth's methods of breathing. As we learn groundedness and mindfulness from yoga, we can better learn the value of the ground we walk on and the environment that serves us. For example, let's examine a beneficial technique that imitates nature called the Bumblebee Breath. I'm going to walk you guys through an activity, and I want you guys to do it with me for 5 breaths. Are we ready? All right. So let's start off with taking a few natural breaths, just breathing in and out. So Get comfortable in your seats and get ready. Let's close our eyes. Then, keeping our lips tightly sealed, inhale. Inhale as deep as you can and hold for a couple of seconds. Once you can't hold anymore, release in the form of a humming sound. So, 3 more breaths, guys. 'Was that calming for you guys? So like I said before, the importance of breathing is heavily stressed in yoga. The long, deep breaths that I just taught you, that the Bumblebee Breath encourage, it creates this equilibrium in our body that helps to ease anxiety as it relieves the short, tight upper chest breathing that we associate with high stress situations, anxious situations, situations where you feel angry. And that deep breathing opens our lungs up and calms us, puts us more into our seats, teaches us where we are in nature. Our exercise is modeled after the world's most efficient pollinators in the world, the bee. The bees pollinate nearly 3/4 of the plants that produce 90% of the world's food. They help grow the same plants that absorb CO2 from the environment. Yet the populations of bees are declining rapidly due to climate change, even though they are major forces in preventing it. We can look at how we imitate the bee to understand their immense value to the environment. And from that, we can help to save the bee population one step at a time. Similarly, the eagle is a symbol in our society for strength. It's even the emblem for the US. And another yoga pose exists that embodies the eagle. Let's try it together. So I'm going to take a step back. This one uses your arms. So I want you guys to do this one for me, especially since we're crouched over our computers all day. We probably have crunched over backs and we need to fix our posture a little bit. So take your left arm and take your left arm elbow and the nook of your right arm. Place it inside like this and cross over your fingers. We're going to hold this for 5 breaths, 5 deep breaths. So we eradicate that short upper chest breathing. Ready? Let's make sure we're focusing on our breath. Was that great? Do you guys feel better? Does your posture feel relieved? In this position, we embody the eagle. We can embody the strength and the power of the eagle. We can connect back to nature and become the eagle flying through the trees which are the habitat of the eagle. Yet these beautiful creatures are seeing the destruction of their habits, like through the wildfires. The warmer, drier conditions and increased drought can destroy entire ecosystems, like this regal and symbolic eagle that we just imitated. I want to go through a couple slides just to remind you of the destruction of our beautiful earth. The equilibrium of the earth is being messed up. We're seeing the beauty of these ecosystems messed up, the diversity. To preserve our wonderful earth, we must initiate a stronger connection to the natural world and a deeper understanding of our responsibility to conserve it. We have to create lifestyles in harmony with nature instead of against it. Just as yoga teaches us to be mindful and aware, we can practice mindful consumption of materials. Like I said, the earth is overworked and overused. We cannot exploit it, so let us respect it in our day-to-day rituals. As Drawdown encourages us to do, we can incorporate more public transit into our lives. Instead of taking our own car and pushing those fuels into the environment, we can preserve that and take a bus that's already running. Or it can be a more plant-rich diet, eat more vegetables, as my peer Tara was saying earlier, eradicate red meat for one day out of the week. We can consume consciously by recycling our plastic and non-degradable materials every day, or composting our fruit and vegetable peels. Any effort for a brighter future is major. Take a yoga class and translate the teachings to your life. And as we incorporate these rituals into our daily lives, remember the words of Rachel Carson, a preeminent conservationist. She tells us that those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. As we contemplate the beauty of our earth, we must find the strength to preserve it, for we cannot thrive without it. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you gained something. And I do encourage yoga a lot for anybody who's very stressed out.
Thank you, Zara. That was well done.
Thank you.
And I had a question for you, Zara. So I think one of the things we're trying to cultivate is to find ways to be both strong and compassionate at the same time. And maybe you could share from your own point of view how yoga helps you to kind of combine those skills that are somewhat different. We need the strength to persevere right now. We need the strength to take on the challenge of adopting these new practices. We need the strength of going to public hearings and talking to elected officials, getting them to see why some of these new practices of regenerative economics are so important. But how does your yoga practice give you more strength in your daily life?
A major misconception about yoga is that it can be easy. Yoga is a fluidity of many movements. It can be a really difficult position next to a really easy position. It could take core strength, it could take mental strength, the mental strength of letting yourself just be in the moment, or the physical strength of being in a difficult position. But I think the strength that we develop from yoga can incorporate into our strength of our mind and the strength of our connection to our earth. And from that connection we develop with the earth and our situation where we are, we can be compassionate for the world that we live in, compassionate for the nature around us, compassionate for the little efforts we put in day to day, our day-to-day rituals, as I mentioned, so that we can regenerate the earth, preserve the earth, and thrive in the earth.
One more question. On Long Island, we have a lot of lawns, and with our lawns, we have a lot of gas leaf blowers that make a tremendous amount of noise and cause a lot of stress for people. What is it that yoga might provide so that we can get our elected officials to think about this issue in creative new ways to help solve a simple problem like this? And if you didn't know it, Zara, these leaf blowers themselves consume huge quantities of gasoline or I should state it a little differently. They happen to pollute far more carbon dioxide and other gases for the small tasks that we ask them to do. So they're a huge air pollution and noise pollution problem.
Well, what I would advise is that personally, I've never used a leaf blower. I am forced to take a plow and plow my lawn Sunday mornings when there's a lot of leaves. I would say, quite frankly, do yoga to help your posture so that when you're raking your lawn, instead of using a leaf blower, it'll help your posture and it can
That's a-
help you plow for longer
That's
without
a
the
great
leaf
answer.
blower.
That's a great answer. I love that answer. And again, I put you on the spot there, asking you to solve problems that 20 years of civic meetings haven't yet solved. So thank you. So we have one more guest speaker to bring on to finish up our youth panelists. So I'd like to ask Aliyah Hamid to join us, and she'll be finishing up this awesome panel on the same theme of thinking about our health and thinking about how we can use health, our personal health, in our larger daily lives. Aliyah?
Hi, everyone. Dr. Carlin, thank you so much for having me, and Drawdown, thank you so much for having me. And just like, thank you to all my peers who have incredible presentations. And I'm a sophomore at Syosset High School, and also an intern for HBCAC. And today I would like to talk about environmental feminism and how going forward, this will help us make immense strides towards addressing the climate issue. So I invite you to reflect as I present, or even type in the chat, what do you find beautiful? And as you will find, beauty is not a monolith. And one key thing that reflects this and that creates context for my talk is feminism, which as the International Women's Development Agency puts it, it's about learning and understanding the ways that inequality affects women and men. Often, feminism is seen as a controversial topic, as women wanting to rise above men, and it ignites a lot of fear. But feminism allows for true equality that leaves no one behind. And a key part of feminism is partnership. Professor Carlin mentioned Ryan Ziegler earlier, and she talks about the importance of partnership societies. And within feminism, something key to understand is that feminism in today's context is intersectional. It considers the overlapping of race, ability, sexuality, age, ethnicity, religion, and socioeconomic status that creates an understanding that different women and different individuals will have different experiences based on these factors. And when we talk about overlapping issues, this one key overlapping issue is climate change and how hierarchical systems affect the Earth, Mother Earth, equally as they affect women and other people on the gender spectrum in a patriarchal society. And environmental feminism allows us to reconcile social inequality, political inequality, gender equality, and environmental health. And it imagines a partnership-based society in which women and children are at the core of care. And so when we talk about beauty, right, as a teenager, I'm 15, I like to use the analogy that I am a budding flower, but surrounded by pollutants and toxicants, one of which is social media. And it holds this overbearing message that one is never enough. One is never pretty enough, successful enough, thin enough. And for a woman of color like myself, sometimes not white enough. But feminism can help us understand that beauty is not a monolith. For instance, the beauty of a rainforest is different from that of a hiking trail. And today I would like environmental feminism to be an outlet for talking about how, in order to be successful with climate change, we need to rescue ourselves and Mother Earth, and claiming what is beautiful about the planet and what is intrinsically beautiful about ourselves. This begins with women and how we define our own beauty and extending this to the planet. A pertinent example of this is a certain type of climate trauma that is a result of our own trauma, traumatizing the environment. Materialism ignites that feeling that we're not good enough. And this segues into insecurities, and this fuels, for the most part, the beauty industry. And it also therefore contributes to self-destruction of ourselves sometimes and Mother Earth. For instance, beauty products are, they contain microplastics, which are often endocrine disruptors, and they also affect our water supply and our ecosystem. One shower can result in 100,000 microplastics entering the ocean. And per year, the beauty industry produces 120 billion units of plastic packaging. And this packaging lends itself to deforestation, increased water consumption that isn't necessary, and CO2 emissions. And these are, going back to the idea of the flower, these are toxins to the flowers that are impacting both us and the planet. For instance, the EWG determined that at least 16 chemicals in teens girls' bodies on average are found as a result of them using beauty products disproportionately. This affects our self-esteem, health, and Mother Earth, who I like to think of as this ultimate environmental feminist. But as we've, expanded our society and civilization, we took advantage of her with greed and haste. And she used to be this proud and vibrant being. Earlier, my peers were talking about, extending themselves within the earth and that beauty of nature and hike and nature walks. But we, in a way, we are harming Mother Earth without giving back to her. And instead, we need to embrace a caring, wholehearted approach. We want to abandon the haste fueled by our greed and look within ourselves. What I call sustainable beautification from the inside out. The repressive means of making women feel like not enough makes us abandon and deface ourselves. We forget gratitude and we might engage in self-destructive behaviors. Just as patriarchal we took advantage of Mother Earth, and mothers, when you think of the idea of a mother, they're caring and attentive, generous, nurturing, and fond. And if we took advantage of our mothers in that way, that wouldn't be so kind. And so we must give that back. We need to create caring societies, partnership societies, and shape the narrative. We need to include environmental feminism in all facets of solutions towards climate change. For instance, not just expanding girls' education, which is so important, but also in other ways, such as the beauty industry. And we need to address this with the perspective of restoring and maintaining organic beauty. So how can we do so? So there are a few key ways that connect to Drawdown's overall mission that we can embrace environmental feminism through. For instance, with recycling, we can embrace circular processes that take waste and they put them back into the cycle, which invokes gratitude for what we have and not destroying Mother Earth. There's also the opportunity to reconstruct all aspects of the issue. For instance, there are a few caveats, such as, although companies may brand their products as natural, there may still be industrial waste. Although bioplastics may be sustainable, they are still toxic. Moreover, restoration of damaged ecosystems is another method of sustainable beautification from the inside out, such as yards without pesticides. You can often yards that are without pesticides may look better than yards with pesticides. And it's also better for Mother Earth. as well as restoration of temperate forests, because as aforementioned, the deforestation caused by industry is a harm, and then also protecting our oceans and wetlands. And lastly, radical listening to communities, to marginalized individuals, to women, and to ourselves. With radical listening, it asks communities and women what they need to protect their environment, and by doing and in implementing this, we can allow women to take leadership roles and input their concerns, because climate change disproportionately affects women, since women face higher rates of violence and crisis, and they constitute more of the world's poor. Indigenous women may have more knowledge of natural resources and will and in protecting and helping them by empowering them and protecting their environment. And we can also support food security and more sustainable agriculture by empowering female agricultural workers, who make up 43% of the agricultural labor force. And often they're unpaid or have low wages. But if you give them a greater access to resources like land rights and education, their farm yields will increase, which diminishes hunger, but also decreases the pressure to deforest for more ground, so avoiding emissions being released. So what would the world look like with environmental feminism? I think that is a key idea that we need to close with today. So as I mentioned before, radical listening can also be applied to ourselves. And one powerful way of doing this is through being in the moment, by implementing a lack of judgment, self-compassion, and gratitude towards ourselves and the earth. And so I invite you to take a moment to breathe, get comfortable in your seat, and I will walk you through a brief guided meditation on an environmental feminist world. So close your eyes and allow yourself to breathe normally, following but not guiding the natural rhythm of the breath. Allow yourself to move deeper and deeper into a peaceful place of calm. Here you have the stillness and safety to become more in tune with yourself and the world around you. Imagine you open the door, and behind it you see a future of sustainable living and harmony and wholehearted beauty. Climate change, we ourselves, are no longer a looming threat. Take a moment to breathe in and out this vision. So what do you see? Perhaps you see children playing together, worry-free, or empowered women stepping up to a podium. Do you see yourself in the mirror without judgment? Maybe you see a crystal clear ocean with vibrant reefs. What do you hear? Do you hear laughter and the clink of drinks, a bird call, the ebb and flow of the waves of the ocean, like the waves of your breath? Is there music, or are you encaptured in the serenity of silence? What do you smell? Do you smell sea salt, a floral odor, spices from a plant-based meal, or maybe Mother Nature herself and the sweet air of her tranquility enveloping you? I invite you to breathe this in and out and allow it to embrace each cell of your being. And lastly, what do you feel? Do you feel the tickle of grass against your feet, relief, the slow breathing in and out accompanied by contentment? Or do you feel empowered and confident, as if you are a candle on an eternal flame that is bright and glowing? Allow your soul to light up with this flame and to grow with it. And I invite you to place your hand on your heart and sense into the energy of your body, that here in your core, there's a readiness for change, and and signals a desire for change and reaching this dream. And this change is the ember, the heartbeat of life. It enables you and us to move forward, to change and grow, and to tap into the depths of your being and growing to know yourself and Mother Earth in new ways. And you are stepping forward into this life. You have made a conscious decision to create the beautiful future that is rightly yours and ours. Again, breathe in light of change, breathe out self-love and kindness. Now, I know that was long, but open your eyes if you're still closed and awakened with the spirit of environmental feminism. So I invite you to talk in the chat. What do you imagine an environmental feminist world to be like? And for me, I think about feminist forests and sustainable logging, or giving gardens. I love alliteration, like avoiding pesticides in our lawns, following initiatives for women's education, leadership, and climate change, and most importantly, spreading love. I think is the core of what we should approach climate change with. And earlier I showed a turtle who was enveloped by plastic, but this is essentially what I envision an environmental feminist world to be like, embracing ourselves and Mother Earth. Thank you. I do see some things in the chat that I'd like to respond to. One second. Okay. And yeah, so Karen says, I see a history of wonderful, brave, authentic women. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Aaliyah. You gave us a tremendous amount to think about, and you really integrated all that we've been talking about in our youth panel together. So we started today saying that our commitment to total wellness is our superpower. And I think you're asserting that your inner feminist is definitely a part of your path to wellness and your superpower. I think that's coming across really clear. I want to go back to some comments that were made earlier about the traits of indigenous cultures and how they survived through their cultural transitions. One was a sense of the sacred, and the other was future oriented. So we didn't know at all that they would have that conversation, but you took us into that future of environmental feminism, and you really tried to light us up. And that's what Paul Hawken ended his comments with as well, that we need to each find that path that lights us up. I had mentioned the work of Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist monk, and his introduction of this word interbeing. And I would like to provide a real short definition of that. We have this sense of living in a world that's really permanent. We build homes that last for decades and maybe even into centuries. We build cities that we think will last forever. But everything is in a constant state of flow. Nothing is ever staying the same. The only thing that truly exists is this instantaneous moment of time, and then it's gone. And everything in this state of flow also exists in interdependence. We people exist in interdependence with the natural world. And culturally, all the cultures of the world share this amazing planet together. So we are just jetting around in space on this planet. Everything's in flux. And therefore, we need to have a deeper appreciation for living in the moment, celebrating the moment. And as Aaliyah ended with, it really is about the experience of love in this life. and elevating that experience of love to its proper place, not just in our private lives, but in our culture and the world's culture. Because we're truly on a path of building a culture of peace, or we're going to annihilate life on Earth. It's pretty much that simple. So my clock says 10 p.m. I think you'll all join me in thanking these amazing students for what they've done tonight, following two brilliant speakers, and then our amazing musical guest. This has all been just a wonderful, wonderful day. So please come back tomorrow for day 2. This is just an awesome start. Have a wonderful night, and thank you for joining us.